All right. So as I said earlier, we're going to do 3 parts on Visio tonight. The first part is kind of a Visio overview. Second part will be network specific Visio documentation and some tricks to do that. And the third part, time permitting, is going to be the kind of the advanced stuff, how to make your own cool looking or kind of cool looking stencils. So first of all, we want to talk about stencils. In your documents folder, there is a folder called My Shapes. And My Shapes is where all of your stencils exist. So if we look at these, if you create folders in here, that's what I recommend when you do get your stencils, because stencils are basically your shapes. If you've got Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, it's just a shell, and then you have to put all the content in it. So in Visio, your content is essentially coming from these stencils. And there are some stencils that come with it right now. So the version of PowerPoint, or not PowerPoint, I've got PowerPoint on the brain, Visio that we're running is the professional version. I highly recommend the professional version if you're going to do any networking at all.
Is that what comes in the action pack?
I think it comes in the action pack. I'm not sure. You might want to check on that. Not a cheap program, for sure, but you get a lot of power with it. So if you've been using Visio for a while, this is the 2013 version. We've got the ribbon in here. I'm not going to pick the ribbon apart. You guys know what it is. You know what it does. One thing I did change on this is I went to the backstage. I went to File and then to Options, and then on Customize the ribbon, there is a box on the right hand side that says Developer. I checked that box to turn Developer on. I don't have a plug-in as far as Camtasia is concerned. Camtasia has a plug-in for recording PowerPoint. I don't think they've got one for Visio. So I see some add-ins. Maybe it's in, we'll see. But I would turn on the Developer tab. All you have to do is check that box and hit OK. And the Developer tab gives you a couple things you may not need right up front, but in the third part we will use them, especially if you're doing anything with making custom shapes. And there's some, if you ever have to change macros and add some macro security, this is where you would do it, is in the Developer tab. So that's the only change I've made to the interface. So if you say New, it's going to give you some frequently used templates in the front. Basic diagrams, some blank ones, business, engineering. It's a little big. I would recommend searching for whatever it is you're looking for. Try to get familiar with the templates that are built into Visio first, because if you go out on the web and start to look out there, you can lose a lot of time pretty quickly, and chances are what you need is in here. So if we look at network, for example, there's flow charts, org charts are in here, maps and floor plans. I'll show you guys some examples of those later on. But we'll pick network, and then once we're in there, there's different types of networks. There's an Active Directory network, basic network diagram. There's a 3D version, a detailed network diagram, detailed in 3D, LDAP directory, and a rack diagram. So we'll look at those a little bit more in the second part here in a minute. So before we dive in and start really taking Visio apart, you always begin with the end in mind. Think about what document you're creating, who it's for, and it's not always the same thing. Sometimes you're going to do a document which is for the purposes of documentation. So someone says, this is what the network looks like right now. Sometimes it's, this is what we want the network to look like. Probably more often than not, it's designing what your network changes are going to look like. But some of the examples I've used in the past is when you're trying to take something that is of a technical nature and present it in a way that a non-technical person can understand it. And it may seem a little obtuse to take a tool that's this advanced and has, you know, all these plugins and stencils and everything, but there are two types of people in the world. Some people can visualize things and some people can't. And I'll give you an example. At a previous job, we had employees who could not use a map. These were delivery drivers. You give them a map and they could not point to where they were. And you had to give them written directions. go this far, turn at this street, turn at that street. But they couldn't visualize where they're at now and where there was no spatial relationship. And you're going to run into that sometimes with people in business. I think you're going to run into that more in the SMB market than you are in the medium and the enterprise market, simply because in the larger companies there are people that's part of their job description, is they have the 50,000 foot overview. They've heard of a SAN. They know the difference between a monitor and a PC, between a router and a switch. They've got, they're not technical enough to install it, but they have an idea what you're talking about. Your small business owners, a lot of times you say, we need more RAM. And they say, didn't we just buy RAM last year? Yeah, well, you need more. Well, why do I need more? So you have to present it in a way you can explain it to them that shows this is how much RAM you have, this is how it's allocated, or your storage, or we want to do a change in the network. They usually don't care where all the wires go, and I don't get as detailed as the wires unless it's a small diagram. When we were working on Ken, or you're doing a cluster, or a failover cluster, or a storage network, something like that specifically, but I would never take an entire rack and put every single connection in it. I might put one or two, and that way I can measure how long that cable is based on the way I route it, but I wouldn't get that crazy. So let's start off. We'll do a basic network diagram here, and we get the choice of metric or US units. I'll just pick US. And you'll see a change here in Visio. It's going to load these stencils on the left-hand side, and each one of these is basically a category. It's a tiny library of objects, and you can add additional stencils. You can plug them in. So when we pick the template, sometimes you have templates that are company standards, and they've got a certain background and they've got a certain font. There's a color scheme, and you can get crazy in here, go into the design, and there's all types of themes in here, especially, hey, I like that, 32 gigs of RAM and a quad-core i7 on an SSD, and I hit Visio and it says not responding. that's pretty impressive. So there's themes here. If you have a company set of colors, you can create your own if they don't have one already, and then there's different variants on it. I try to work, if at all possible, especially when doing the designing, I try to work in the theme called no theme. The reason why is, you notice, or you may not have even seen that, when I click no theme, all these changed. Let me undo that so you can see what happens. See, it's got a theme selected already, and so all these servers are this kind of weird looking blue, and the virtual servers and the printers and the scanners, and maybe that's not exactly what I'm looking for. So if I go in to the theme, where was it? Where's no theme? There it is. Go to no theme. This is more what you're used to. Is that one, or another one we see a lot is the 3D one. So I just wanted to show you that up front, that even though you didn't pick anything by default, it's already injecting different things into your document you may or may not like. So start with it easy, start with it clean, and then you can do all the massaging and making your lines thicker and routing them pretty and all that stuff later on. So let's close that, and I'm going to go back to the network layout. So basic network diagram. Actually, I don't want basic, I want network. And the reason why is I want the detailed 3D diagram. Alright, so here's the server, and here's a firewall, and here's a switch, and there's some Ethernet, and is there even such a thing as a supercomputer anymore? I don't know, but they've
yeah, I've been reading about some lately, and what do they do these days?
Yep, so they've still got some of these icons in here. So let's talk a little bit about the manipulation, the spatial relationship between these. If we go to computers and monitors, maybe you're going to drag some PCs out here, and you notice as I'm doing this, it's giving me these grid lines which make it easy to line up. I'm seeing like little green arrows. So that's new in 2013, is the ability to, it's kind of trying to help you lay it out. If you go to the view and grid, I hate the grid view. It just looks really busy to me. I like to keep it clean. You can turn the grid on and off, but that's mainly the purpose of the grid, is to help you line up. So now that you've got these, as you're pulling these out, you can see.
Yeah, that I'd never seen one do that before, but
Yeah.
I never played with 2013 Visio.
Yeah, so you're seeing the space here, how close I am. But let's just say I'm in a hurry, and get back over there. I'm in a hurry, and I'm just dragging these PCs wherever. I really don't care, and I don't have those nice little alignment things. Well, I used to spend a lot of time trying to get these, the Type A person. I want it to be nice and clean and lined up, and somebody is calling my cell phone. Yeah, that's going to have to go to voicemail. So I'll show you something you may have not seen before. If you go to the Home tab, let's say we're going to highlight these 3 PCs right here, and we'll go to Position, and you can change the way you can do an auto space. We'll do more distributed options, and you can say, well, let's say I want to put them this way or that way. Let's just put them like that, and it should. Let me make this really out of whack here. There we go. This should be a little easier to see. So Position, and you notice it spaced those evenly for me. I don't know how far apart it is. I really don't care. I don't need to know. So you throw your PCs out there and get them in a kind of okay looking fashion, and then you can tell it to space them out and make it nice and pretty for you. And I'll do the same thing here. I'll pull that one there, pull this one way over here as an example. Let me get rid of that size there. Grab it, position, distribute it evenly. Now, the reason why is it took the furthest point here and the furthest point there, and that's why this row ended up wider than the other one. But with the alignment guide, you should be able to get your first one and your last one pretty close, and then as you pull additional ones out here, and let's even overlap it a little bit like that. Okay, grab it, distribute it evenly. There you go. So
oh, that's new for 2000. Has that always been there? Or
I recently found out about it, so I don't know how new that is. But I have spent a lot of time trying to tweak that little, get it just right, and it's too big, and shrink the font and all that kind of stuff. So we've got some extras in here. We'll delete that one, and we'll delete that one, and we'll delete that one too. Line these guys up. I think we pretty much beat that trick into the ground. There we go. And I'm going to move these over here. All right. Some other basic things we want to show you are, I think most of what you need is on the main page, and the problem is it's not something you see, and you won't see it until you mouse over one of these objects and you right-click it. You see this this little shortcut bar here. This has your different drawing tools in it. Make your fonts bigger or smaller, your bold, your italic, your format painter. You can change what that shape is. So have you ever put something in there and then you labeled it and then you draw your connections and you're like, oh wait, that's a SQL server, I wanted an Exchange server, and I dragged and dropped the wrong server in there. So when you hit change shape, it gives you your other shapes that are in there, and you can say, well, I wanted that one to be a laptop. So whatever properties you had stay there, whatever formatting you had. And in a while, when we go over the networking part of it, you'll see that is actually a lot bigger deal when you start attaching metadata to these objects. So we can make that a PC, or change whatever that shape is. It's pulling it from the library. And this library doesn't have a lot of things. Now what happens if I take that same object, I click it, and then I go to, let's say, servers. And I'm looking at servers over here on the left. Now when I right click that and go to change object, it's pulling this list not from the family that machine came from. It's pulling it from whatever stencil library you have open on the left. So you notice when I did that a moment ago, I couldn't change it into a web server or into a mail server, e-commerce server. There's a mail server right there, not file, email server. So where you're at on this side can determine what you're going to see if you change that shape. And the change shape is up here also. So what it's doing is it's saving you a lot of time. Instead of going, clicking the object, going up here, clicking the object, going up here, you can just right click the object, and then there's what you need, most of what you need. I don't think group and ungroup are here. I use group and ungroup quite a bit. So let's talk about stacking and bringing to the front and the back. So I'm going to open another tab here, and this time I'm going to draw a box, and see it gives me the little alignment box there, which is that's telling me it's a perfect square. You get the same thing with a circle. If you start kind of wide and you get close to a circle, it'll kind of snap to it and keep it on that circle. And let's do another. We'll just do a rectangle here, and then we'll do. I'm not going to do arcs and freeforms yet. Okay. And so now I'm done with this. I don't want to keep changing these objects, so I'm going to go back to my pointer tool. And now I can highlight things. So the first thing you'll notice is there is an order to these. The order that I pulled them onto the page shows it's like stacking pieces of paper on your desk. And you can change what order they're stacked in, and it's not in position, it's not in a line, and it's actually a little hard to see in this window that we've got here. Because I've got the move to the front and the move to the back. My windows are a little bit tiny. So what I'll do is just right click it, and then there's bring to the front. And now you notice there's my icon in the front. So let me turn that back on. So this collapses the ribbon. You can also do a double click on whatever the item is, and it'll pin it open. So if you just mouse up, let's say we're working in here, and we unpin it, so we have more workspace, and then you go up to review and do a single click. You can do what you need, and then you click, it goes away. But if you double click on it, it stays pinned. So you see a little pin goes in there. So we're going to fill these items to make it a little bit more interesting and easier to see. So we'll do a blue square, we'll do a yellow circle, and we'll do a red rectangle. Now, so when you're doing the front and the back, if I want the, I don't think anybody is silly enough to delete the circle and then recreate it. But so if I copy and then paste, the new one that I just created is on top of all the other objects. And you can see it when you're moving. You're still getting the green alignment grid to try and help you line these things up. And the item becomes semi-transparent so that you can see what's underneath it. And if it was just an outline, it would be really hard to see. But when you're dragging those around, you can see the whole object. So we'll delete that one. For just a moment here, we'll right click this one and we'll bring it to the front. Now it's in front of all of them. We'll send it to the back. You can also do it one layer at a time. There's bring forward and send backwards. So you can do stacking that way. Oops. So that if you've got, let's say, a network cable that's connecting up to something, you don't want the network cable behind your network card. You actually want it in front, because the connection on the network cable, it just looks like it would disappear. So give you an example here. If we go to, let's do a connector. Let's say I go from here to the center there. If this was actually, instead of a square, was a picture of a network card, I might want it to actually connect to the network card and show up. In this case, it's just a square, so it doesn't matter. Alright, so the next thing, we're going to talk about grouping a little bit. Grouping is when you take several items and you attach them together. So let's say I do a text box which says hello world, and I do, I'm going to insert, let's insert something. I don't want to do a container yet. Let's just do a call out. Let's do text. Error occurred. Unexpected end of file. And I'm also going to take my server here and a database server here, and I've got all these things lined up however the way I want. I can go back to the pointer view, drag the highlighter around them, and it has to be around the whole thing. If I just say I'm doing hello world in there, you notice I didn't get this box because I didn't go all the way to the end. So it's easier to just grab more than you need, and if you grab something extra that you don't want, you can do a control click to unselect it, or control click to bring it back. But once you've got those items highlighted, you can go in here and group an object. See how it kind of shortened these up a little bit? I can add these items to a group, and now I can move them as a group, but I can also resize them as a group as well, which I may or may not want. So you notice my text is not changing size, but my images are. So these images are, the stencils are vector art. So vector art is a description of a picture. It's saying I am a box that is, you know, this many inches wide, this many inches tall, and this is my inside color. And when you resize vector art, it doesn't lose detail. When you do JPEGs, PNGs, bitmaps, it gets blurry when it gets too small, and it gets blocky when it gets big. So that's why these are done with vector art. There's a time, and we'll show that in the third part, but sometimes you just need a picture of something, especially when you're dealing with business owners. They don't understand what is this server here. To them, that is a PC with a Coke can beside it, or maybe it's Pepsi because it's blue, but they don't think that's a database server. So you may have to have an actual picture of this is what your server looks like, Mr. Business Owner, so they can kind of conceptualize. They walk in the room, oh, that's the camera server, or that's the mail server, that's the air conditioner, I mean, whatever. So we've done grouping. There's also, you can change maybe the direction something wants. Maybe if you have a server and you can go to a line, and you, or not a line, you can go to position and you can rotate the diagram or flip it. So if I want to flip it horizontally, now my server is facing the other direction. Because this is vector art, it is going to, if there's text attached to it, the text is going to still be reading the right way. If it was a JPEG or an actual picture or photograph, you flip it, obviously the text is going to be backwards. It looks like it's in a mirror. Another thing is labeling this. You know what? This is a label that I touched on here. You can label these just by highlighting it and typing on them. Ooh. Computer 1. What you don't get with that is a lot of control. And what I've done over the years is I would, hit a shift enter to get another line, and I would put the IP address, and I might, put a host name, might put a brand, might do whatever, and maybe I didn't like where that was. So if I click on it to highlight it, you notice there's a little yellow dot. That little yellow dot is where the description is. Actually, we do it this way. It's hard to do here. Hang on. Let me zoom in some to 200. There we go. So now if I pick, you guys should see it better. See this? It's trying to add another computer to the side here. What I want to do is single click it and then take this yellow dot and I can move it. So if it's in the way, if I wanted to put another computer below that and it was in the way with the network connection, I can just move it to the side, move it on top of it, wherever I need to. Those yellow dots come in handy as well. So this is another trivia. You see these little blue arrows that pop up here? See, it's always trying to help me. It sees a computer all the way to its left. So just by me moving the mouse over there, it thinks maybe I want to connect to it. So it's trying to draw that connection. But there's these 4 items right here that show up as other things I can put. And maybe I don't want servers. Maybe I want networks or whatever. And where does it get this list of things anyway? Where it gets those on the prompt for the Audio Connect are the first 4 items in whatever stencil you've got open. So if I said I want to go to network locations, and there's cloud, there's city, building, house, now if I come over here and mouse over it, I have cloud. So I can go over this side and say, well, this computer is connected to the cloud. And there's the cloud.
Stormy cloud.
Stormy cloud, yeah, that's right. So what you can do is this is anything above this line is kind of your favorites. They're very similar to Windows and pitting things to the start menu. You can do that and say, well, if I want to take a town and make town number 1, it's above the line, so it's in my favorites, but there's only 4 allowed. So when I come back over here, I see there's the town, there's the cloud, there's the city, there's the building. So you can move things around inside the stencil. If you're going to be using an item a lot, just move it up to the top of that particular stencil. You're not deleting it or changing it, you're just changing the order whether or not it's in there. So it's the point of that is to make it easy to quickly be able to add a bunch of computers on there, especially if they're connected to each other. Alright, next, suppose I wanted to connect all these computers to the cloud. I mean, that's what Microsoft wants, right? Everybody's going to the cloud. If I disconnect that one connection right there, and I connect the cloud, I've got all these yellow dots. I can take one of these yellow dots, grab it, and drag it to one of my computers. And you can snap it to certain things, and then drag another one, drag another one, drag another one, like that.
You grab the dot on the top right and fold it down to one on the bottom left. Is it?
It resizes the cloud, and those
No,
move
I
with
mean,
me.
if you took the yellow dot on the top right
Oh, here?
and fold it to the lower left.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where it is.
But it'll make it come out the right proper place. And
Yep. And I believe you always have one dot. I don't think it ever leaves you with none. Like if you pulled one out, I think it puts one back in there. So you notice when I resize this, my lines are moving. That's probably not a good thing, because if I take this computer and move it, the line stays with it, right? And that's because it is attached, it's connected. So when I take this and I'm bringing it over here, it's not attaching it, it's not connecting it. And I don't know if it's that particular object the way it is or what,
well,
but
that's what I played with Visio. That's the kind of problems I was getting at. I was using some of those, and then I moved something. Well, that line's not connected anymore. You know, now the straight ones, they're attached. They move with it.
yeah.
I just installed Visio. I downloaded and installed it a while ago.
Okay.
So I got it on here to 2013.
Well, what we'll do is we'll go to networks and peripherals. We'll bring an Ethernet out here, and this is a good example. I like to take my Ethernet and click it and just say what the IP range is. You know, so 192.168.2.0, and then click off. So it's already got 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom. So if I grab this,
I'll actually 2 on the bottom.
huh?
Okay, there's 1, 2 on the
Oh,
bottom.
3 and 2. Okay. So watch what happens as I move over this object. See how it turns green in the center? Right there, you see the little green square? And then I let go. Now when I move this, actually I need to ungroup this first. Hang on. Should doing too many demos on the same page. Take this one, move it. There. There's a green. So now if I move that, it moves the line with it. So when you're dragging your lines over, make sure that it actually makes a connection. And it's usually in the
If you go to the edge, it'd be the same.
Some of them you can, some is the edge, some it has to be the center. A lot of it depends on the object. So if I take this one and say, if I move it around, there's a green dot. So now if I move this, the line moves with it too. So, right, so you gotta snap
That's
it.
what I ran into last time I played with this, because I couldn't keep some of the lines would follow, some of them wouldn't.
Yeah, so some of them don't. So not to tip my hand too early. So if you bring a JPEG or insert an image, there's no green dot for it to connect to, right? Well, here's my little trick that I do. Let's just say this is my image here. This red, and now you can see as we start, we can see what's stacking, what's ahead, what's behind. So if I wanted this in the front, I can go in and change it and say, send it back 1, or send it all the way to the back, bring it up 1, or bring it all the way to the front. So let's say this is a picture, I don't know, Angelina Jolie, and I want to draw a connection between her and my subnet for some reason. What I do is I'll take an ellipse, which is just a little tiny circle, like that. Grab it and move it down here, into the block. Let's just to show that at no point do my hands leave my arms. Say that's where I want my connection to be. I'll take that connection and I'll, stacking wise, I'll send it all the way to the back, right? And then when I click off of it, you can't see it anymore because it's behind it. I'll grab those items, those two of them, you can see my dot and that, and I will group them. And hopefully this works for us. I'm going to look like a moron. Bring it right there. Should be there. Let me ungroup those real quick. There, found it. And now I can group those together. Group. And did it move? Nope. Oh well. That's what I get for using generic shape. So like you were saying, if you connect it to the edge and then you move the item that's connecting to it, or you move the item being connected to, you get a broken connection. So always look for the green dot. The other thing that you run into is maybe this gets a little confusing, having all these lines that are all running the same distance. You get that one there, and I'll grab another one and pull that one out, and maybe that's going up higher, and you know, this one's pulling up and I'm trying to go over here. Ooh. Where's my green dot? There's my green dot there. And see how it starts getting a little ugly? That's when you can go in and click one of the connectors, or you can click all the connectors and you can change what type of connector it is. So if I say this one right here, come on. I know you can do it. Connector. See if I draw a connection from here to my switch. See how that little dot showed up? I did not put that dot there. Now I can take that connector and I can say I want a straight connector, or I want a curved connector. And then I'll just go back. Yep, and let's go back and bring that up to the front. And then if I move it down here, see how it kind of curves it with it? But again, you're drawing all the way into the item. So when you're done and you're happy with everything, you can click on it and say, okay, go ahead and bring that to the front. And then bring this one to the front. And now it looks nice and neat and ends in there. So far so good. So there's your connections, and you know, we're not going to get into shadows and all the other crazy stuff, but you can. And like, you know, just a reminder, you say, well, maybe I want to change that shape. I go to my servers and I say change that server to a big honking server. There we go. And you notice I should still have my connection. See how it ends in a green dot? That tells me that it is connected to that. And I can just take that connection there and just say delete the whole thing.
Cartoons of those characters like that?
I have not. So what happens if you've got one of these connectors out here and you don't want it anymore? You notice when if I click this connector that I made by hand and delete it, it goes away, right? But if I click on that connector and delete it, I lose the whole thing, which I don't want. All you do is the exact opposite of how you created it. You click it and just drag it back inside the switch. Same thing with this one. I click it. See the yellow dot down here. I drag it back inside the switch. So you're just basically putting your toys away. A manual connector, which is just here, I can go from, see how it's highlighting the edge, or I can highlight the center. I like to pick the center and then say I want the edge here of that dot, or want the center of this, and then I can take that one, right click it, say make it a straight connector. And then when you're done, once you've got everything arranged, because you could spend all this time trying to get it all nice and pretty, and then say, oh, I need to add 2 more servers, now I got to move it all. I do my layering at the very end. So let's talk about layering, for example. You're trying to lay something out, and I'll give you a good example. I wanted to do some maps, so I went and got a picture of a map which had, you know, all kinds of stuff on it that I didn't need. I didn't need a picture of the lake. I didn't need to know how many houses were. I just pretty much wanted the streets. So that's where you get into layers. So we can go back to our pointer tool, highlight this server, and go to the layer section and say I want to assign it to a layer. Now this is a brand new document, so the only layer it has is connector, because I pulled a connector on there. It automatically came on a certain layer. But if I hadn't pulled the connector on there, me just pulling objects over out of the libraries, it doesn't add layers. When you're pulling them out of the top here, it does. So let's say this is a new layer, and I'll call this background. So there's my background layer. Whoop-de-doo. Nobody cares. Now, did I assign that to the background layer? No. How I know that is if I click anywhere and just go to layer properties, and I can see what layers are on there. What I want to do is say this is my background, and I'm going to assign it to a layer, to the background. And I can look at this one, assign to a layer, and it was background because I created it. I just uncheck it and remove it off the background. With me so far? And just to confuse it even further, we'll click it and we'll send this all the way to the back. We'll make it the background. So there's our background. So this is our picture, which is taking up a lot of space. It's bigger than I really need it to be, but it's for alignment purposes. And when we do, we'll do a PowerPoint trick at the end that this will come in handy. We'll use that. But I can go to the layer properties and say, you know, that background, I want it to be visible, but I don't want it to print. It's just for layout. It's a guideline. Or you can say, it's really confusing me right now. I don't need it right now. I'm just going to make that layer invisible, and anything on that layer will be gone. Or I could say, we want it to be visible, but we want to set it transparent, maybe 55%. Well, there's nothing behind it, so it doesn't get that transparent. That's a bad example. If it was a picture or something else behind it, you could. But, oops, do layer properties. Let's just go ahead and take the background and say, let's make it invisible. Now it's gone. It's still there. It's still in the document. So if you've ever used AutoCAD, similar, where you've got your walls are on one layer, maybe your dimensions on another layer, your electrical's on another layer, your plumbing's on another layer, and that way you have one document with all your stuff. But if you had everything showing at one time, it would be too confusing to be able to see it. So that's where layers come in. On a simple document, you probably won't use layers, but on a more complex document, especially where you're doing, like you've got an office floor plan and you're doing a before and after, you might want to be able to turn those layers on and off, or be able to turn it on and just do a comparison visually, but you don't want the old layer to print. So we say we need to know where these walls were. We've expanded a suite, our customer has, and this is a firewall. So we have to have pipes that go through it. We can't just punch a hole in the drywall. We don't need that on the network diagram, but we would like it on the building plan. Okay. So that is that one. So that's your basic stuff. Talk about output for a moment. When you save this in 2013, it's going to be the new Office format, which is going to have an X at the end. So you just used to having a 4-digit extension now instead of a 3. You can create a PDF out of these. You can create a JPEG out of these. So when I create, here's the #1 mistake people make. I'll have this thing highlighted right here. Got my server. I'm clicking around, and I'll click that connector, right? And do File, do Save As, and I'm going to save it here in this folder, and I'm going to make it a JPEG. Because, I don't know, maybe I'm using Visio to make a comic strip, who knows. So make it a JPEG, we hit save, and it's going to come up and ask us, well, we want really high quality, we want 100%, we don't want it to be all jaggedy, and we hit OK, and it saves it, and then we go over to our Visio, and here is our Drawing to JPEG, and we click on it, and it is a line. The reason why it does that is if you have one thing highlighted, that is what it is exporting to create your document. Or if you have two things highlighted, maybe I want control click a couple items, and it becomes that. So you don't have to click everything. You don't have to do Control A to grab the whole document. Basically, you have to click nothing. The reason why I bring this out is I always After I've got everything all prettied up and I'm happy with it, the last thing I do is I add my borders and my title blocks. The reason being is your border and your title block gets clicked a lot, and you may accidentally click in an empty space, and Visio, trying to help you, says, oh, you must want the title block. And then you export it to a PDF or you export it to a JPEG, and they call you on the phone and say, oh, I got an empty document. It's just a border. Well, that's why. So if you want to select everything, you can just hit the escape key, and the escape key will do the same thing as if you were to click outside of the drawing area. So just to prove that we're not making it up, we'll go over here, we'll deselect that little line, do the same steps, file, save as, same place, we're going to give it the same name, make it a JPEG. It's going to tell us, hey, it already exists, I don't care, go ahead and override it, and it saves my settings from the last time. I wish it saved these all the time, because I would always like it to be 100% quality, and sometimes your resolution changes, but just hit OK, and now when I go back and look at drawing 2, it's no longer 4K, it's 92K, and there's all my stuff. So a little bit about the file formats. I try whenever possible to send JPEGs instead of, or PDFs instead of the Visio drawings. Number one, I don't want people changing my drawings and say, well, you sent it to me and it's got your name on it, and there's 3 servers there, I asked for 3 and now you're in trouble. The biggest reason, though, is most people don't have Visio. Like you said, Lee, you just downloaded it. Right, but it's not like Outlook. It's not like on every machine. Yeah, it's not on every machine you own. So there's the Visio viewer, but that gets a little bit tricky because now they've got to use Internet Explorer, which it leverages, and not many people use Internet Explorer. So I just do PDF most of the time. Or if you have OneNote, which is a favorite of mine, once OneNote is installed, you can go here into the system tray and you can change the properties for the screen tool. So when you do it, it says take a screen clipping is Windows key S. You could also use the snipping tool, but I don't like using the snipping tool because then you have to leave what you're doing, open another application, get back to what you were doing, and if you're trying to do a drop-down menu, or like in the email I sent out tonight, a screenshot of a drop-down menu, you open another program and tell it to take a screenshot, well, it's like changing the tire while you're driving down the road. It doesn't work so well. So I tell it to, when it does the screen clipping, by default OneNote will take it and save it inside OneNote. I say just copy it to the clipboard. And so from that point on, every time my computer starts, I can just do Windows key S, and the screen gets a little gray. I draw a box over whatever I want, and now it's in the clipboard and I can paste it in an email. So close that window. Alright, and I think it's pretty much, I don't want to get into all the annotation blocks and everything else. We'll show you one thing. We'll turn that visible back on. Actually, I'm going to save that for the end. Any other questions about these? About the snaps, lining it up? Okay, good. So we'll stop this and then we'll go into our networks next.